All right, we are 6 o'clock on the nose, and if we don't get started, then the rest of the bustling crowd that is waiting in the wings will never come in. So I am a fan of starting things on time whenever possible, and my gratitude tonight to Sydney Zulik, who is the representative here in District 6. I'll say a few words after Sydney does, but I'll just generally open us up and thank you for investing in your city by coming to a town hall tonight. This is the final town hall of the year, and you all have braved the cold, those of you with us in person, and greetings to those of you joining us from home.
Yes, okay. Hello, everybody. Is this good? Okay, hi. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sydney Zulik. I represent City Council District 6, which is this district from 3rd to 17th Street, and then Walnut into campus. I primarily ran to give a voice to the younger crowd, but I do represent all of Bloomington, and so I'm really excited to hear feedback from hopefully everyone tonight. So please feel free to be honest. I could take it, and I would love to respond to any questions that anyone has. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Sydney. Well, I want to just start by talking about a few things that are on my mind right now. And for those of you, and there may be none of you here who have never been to a town hall before, this is really your time. And I actually prefer not to have an auditorium set up because I like these to be conversational. But we do have these note cards for questions. If we don't get a bigger crowd, we can also take additional questions from the floor. But this is the way to get Sydney and I to be answering the questions and talking about the things that are of most import to you all. A few things that I am thinking about these days and focusing time on. The first is while everybody was really ticked off at us a week and a half ago about all of the downtown construction, we now can say you're welcome. We apologize for the inconvenience, and now you're welcome that all of these streets and intersections look better and they are more ADA accessible for our public. We did have some one-time use funds that had to be expended by the end of the year. Those were, it's not spelled Creed, but we pronounce it Creed. Funds, and so those had to be used downtown and by the end of the year. And there happens to be a concrete shortage right now, and so it took us all the way till the end of the year to get that project done. So we're really sorry. I won't also apologize for the successful football team. We're really happy that we have all of this tourism coming to town. But I know that that road construction during a time that we all were surprised to have a winning football team really contributed to some headaches for folks. So thank you for your patience, and we look forward to continuing to improve the infrastructure in the city and the basic city services. I've been really focused on, especially through the budget, on being able to really pivot our wages and salaries in the city. That significant salary increase that was the implementation of a salary study that Crow had done during the last administration took a long time to get even to this big first step, but the reclassification of jobs was very significant and very important in order to attract and retain a highly competent workforce in our city that does all of the work that you see us doing every day. I'm really proud of that. And in addition to that restructuring, we also renegotiated fire and police contracts the first time in anyone's memory that I have talked to that both of those contracts got a unanimous vote. And so we've invested in that public safety. We really value the people who help keep us safe. Thank you for being here tonight. And we need to show them that so that they continue to do that. Additionally, and I'm beyond my 2 minutes, but additionally, one of the other things that is visible around town right now is that we have completed the work on the Hopewell Park. So Hopewell is, of course, the old hospital site, although we're trying to phase out that term. And it will be home to more than 700 new residences. The first RFPs have gone out for those housing initiatives. But the park that really adjoins the B line and goes up through Hopewell has now been completed. And we look forward to getting that open in the spring. But hopefully, just what you can see now is a little teaser of how great that neighborhood's going to be. So those are the high level updates that I'll give to you. I also will just mention, and I can talk about it more if people are interested in hearing about it, that I am hosting a public listening session next Monday. This is for you, Steve. Next Monday at the Southwest branch of the Public Library, and that's just on annexation. We're purposefully doing that in the county because I want to hear from county residents about what their challenges are with annexation, what their ideas are that might make it palatable if it does happen, and how we can do, if annexation does happen, how we can do a good job of actually welcoming people into the city. That is of utmost priority to me, and the annexation is really key, as has been highlighted recently in many different discussions, to our economic growth in the city, county, and region, and also to our population growth, which of course the decline in our population now is leading us to having a discussion, in fact, about closure of some of our MCCSC schools. So should be a concern to all of us. So with that, we will answer some questions.
Let's do it.
Do you want to volley them? I haven't pre-read these yet.
Okay. Could the city consider putting bus lanes along 10th Street between Woodlawn and Eagleson? Traffic slows down the buses a lot.
Sorry, I was not paying attention in class. I was reading this other question. You're reading the question and wanting me to answer it, so I better listen.
Okay. I can.
Or you can answer it.
Okay.
If it's a council-related question or something you know.
I think it is. Okay.
Okay.
I'll answer how I would vote on it. Could the city consider putting bus lanes along 10th Street between Woodlawn and Eagleson? Traffic slows down the buses a lot. So personally, like without a degree in planning, I am generally in favor of bus lanes, but I would have to look at and speak to a lot of the planning department on how that would specifically look, if there's actually this space on the street to do that, stuff like that.
I would also engage the planning department on that, planning and transportation department. We're having lots of discussions right now about how transportation works throughout the city. And what my principle is around transportation is that we need to be a city where all people can get safely to where they're going as efficiently as possible with safety. And that means that we, as a community, have to prioritize pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, and public transit riders. All of those choices are needed, and in fact, the people who use those modes of transportation rely on them. And so when we look at how we are moving through spaces, it's important to me that everybody gets to get where they're going safely, no matter how they arrive there. And slowing down traffic is not always a bad thing. And we'll need to have some efficient ways also to move around our community in cars. So 10th Street already has been pedestrian prioritized, and so that traffic already is really pretty slowed down in those areas. And I think if you're choosing to drive there, you're probably already anticipating a pretty slow route. Our next question is, for me, I think, unless Sydney wants to chime in. What are your plans for the best use of the city's public engagement director, the job description for which is presently being revised? The best use of that public engagement director is, in my mind, to ensure that we actually are getting the voices who don't usually show up, to enable them to be heard. And that doesn't necessarily mean that those voices need to show up. It may mean we need different vehicles for getting those voices to the table. And we need to move the table, right? And it may not be a table. But presently, we have a lot of evening meetings. We have them in locations that we try to choose that are on public transit and other routes. But if you're working second shift, you could never come. If you don't speak English, this is not a comfortable forum for you. If you have never been to a public meeting, you probably are not going to ask a question here in this room. And so I'm looking for somebody who can push me to think out of the box about where I need to show up. I'm looking at for someone who may be comfortable going and knocking some doors with me when we're not campaigning, when we just really want some input. We're going to do this in your neighborhood, or we're thinking about doing this. What do you think? What do you need? And create a system and really a feeling in city government that makes it really, truly accessible to all people to the best extent that we can. I will share with this group, since nobody is bringing forward any other cards, I'll just keep talking. Oh, good. Okay, I'll answer that in a minute. You know, we get completely different people at the traveling town halls than we do in these public town halls, or the traveling office hours, sorry. And then there's a whole different crowd that knows how to or has the courage to call the mayor's office and ask for a meeting. And so we already see by changing the spaces, changing the format, that we are getting engagement at different levels and in different ways. So we want to just continue to do that and to try to make our government as accessible as we possibly can. A government that is open, transparent, and that is truly listening to what people genuinely need. I'll listen this time if you ask a question.
Can I actually respond to that? So I'm really, really excited about this program. During my campaign, I was uncontested, and one of our goals as a campaign was, how do we get out in the community and not just say, hey, I'm asking you for something. It was really about, hey, I'm more than likely going to be your next representative, and how can we help support you? And so I'm really, really excited to have this position in the city. I hope to learn a lot from this person. And so thank you, Carrie, for bringing that forward. Okay, I can read the next question. Could the city make low-density multifamily housing like duplexes be built? By right. Thank you.
I read this as a yes or no question. The answer to the question is yes, the city could. This question is actually one that has been brought forward as a possibility. We did have this discussion just a couple of years ago. It was a very public discussion. It was within the context of the greater UDO. I continue to lead on the principle that we should do no major reform without getting input. And so I am committed to public input on any sweeping UDO changes, and I hope that input can really take the format of genuine curiosity about how we can welcome more people to our community, and how we can do that well. And for me, that means that one solution to that in some minds may be by right duplexes, but as a community, we could come up with maybe 10 other ideas as well. And that doesn't mean they're mutually exclusive either. We may come up with several different ideas. We may say, if they're by right, this is how that by right is going to go. This is the checklist of how to make this work well. The answer to the yes or no question is yes, and I am encouraging public dialogue on the matter.
So in regard to duplexes, it is one type of affordable housing. I think what I've been thinking about a lot is a lot of cities are the same in that they have the same problems, but they don't necessarily have the same combination of solutions. And so duplexes might be a part of our large strategy to combat housing affordability, but it's never going to be just one. I think we have to have some serious discussions on the types of zoning where duplexes and multiplexes are allowed. I'm certainly not an expert on the types of zoning, but I would be more than willing to have that conversation more in depth if anyone, whoever wrote that question, wants to reach out. Thanks.
I'll also add that there is no housing type that is by definition affordable. And so frequently we think that just by adding a housing type, that will be affordable, or we will get enough of them built that we'll suddenly have a great supply of housing. I've been in housing for a long time. Some have called me a housing expert, and I would say there is no single silver bullet to address our housing crisis. We need a buffet, not just a main course. As we look at it, I want to encourage our community to get creative and to think in the perhaps become fluent in the language of possibility about what we might do as a community together.
Okay, next question.
Somebody's going to have to think of a question after this because it looks like Sydney's last
I'll
question.
start popcorning, y'all. You'll have to come up with something. Okay, so our last question is, could the city make more accessible bike ped crossings along State Road 46 and I-69? I'll take a first stab at that. To my knowledge, those are both state roads, and so city has a lot less control over the types of infrastructure that is built along them.
That is correct. And of course, we can advocate to INDOT and look at again some creative solutions. It is pretty intimidating to get across some of these major roads. In particular, I would say I-69. We have only a few access points there. I would say that I ride my bike over the bridges on I-69 and find them to be nice and wide and safe on my bike. I have not attempted to walk over them. But it is a concern as we look at making our community accessible to all. Who has a question you'd like us to talk about. Sydney is
texted a question.
receiving something.
Okay.
And if you have a card, Desiree and Taylor in the back, they'll look for you waving your hands and come get them from you.
Okay, so our question is, any updates on the use of the Showers West building?
Nope. We don't have major updates. We'll probably be engaging about that in the new year. Fire has moved in. So our fire administration is in there as intended. They are very happy there. We're very happy to have them there. And it's that's a great use. We do still have tenants over there, and so getting it used for city use is still in process. Who has another question, or I can talk about other interesting things? Terry, do you, oh, sorry, Dave, I didn't see you. Steve? Steve? No. Dave? Okay, it's a ping pong.
No, so, you said something at the beginning about related decline in population growth, something like that. Am I right about that? You made some reference to that.
We now have two different studies that indicate that our population is declining. It's not just a decline in growth, it is an actual decline. That is concerning because not only are we not growing, but we're not keeping pace. So we're not keeping pace with other communities in Indiana even. But you know, as we are very well aware, at least in the administration side of things, we truly have a housing crisis here. People cannot find a place to live. Our major employers, some of whom have done recent studies about how many of their employees actually live even within Monroe County, it is well under 50%. And that is not what we hear people actually want. They want to be living closer to work. And so, and one might ask, well, how does the population decline if we have the same number of houses? Shouldn't we have the same number of people that we used to have? In fact, if you use a nuclear family as an example, a two-parent household may have bought a home or long-term rented a home, raised 3 kids there who all are thankfully now off and independent, perhaps not in Bloomington. And that same house now only houses 2 of the 5, which is well under 50%. But those 2 people may not be able to find a smaller place to go. And so they stay in the big place. And with the escalating house costs, we know that many people are doing that. So when we get gridlocked like that, and with with the boundaries of the city now being static for 20 years, what we know from all the annexation studies is that if the city boundaries have no elasticity, what happens is that the population and the economy not only flatline, but they in fact start to decline, not only in the actual city, but in the county and frequently in the region if it's some kind of economic hub. And so we now are seeing, in fact, that not having any annexation in 20 years is leading to what all our annexation experts say will happen. So it is concerning. If one of your concerns is wage growth in Bloomington, so more people can afford to live in Bloomington, in order to have wage growth, you need to grow sectors of business so that you have a tiered structure of salaries. Businesses will not want to be coming here if we cannot house the people that will work for them. The school board had a meeting, it was 2 weeks ago, no, it was 1 week ago. It was Thanksgiving week. There is a particularly interesting slide in the demographer's presentation from that meeting, which shows where the school-age populations are in the MCCSC district. And fairly unsurprisingly, most of them are in the city, and there are real trends in where the hot spots of those school-age children are. I expect that once the Summit development is done on the southwest side of town, that will be our next hot spot of school-aged kids. Appropriate because it'll be proximate to Summit Elementary School, but still inadequate based on the forecasts of what we believe we need in the ROI study for the entire county.
I will also respond to that. One of the other nuances in terms of our declining population is that like missing workforce, which Carrie touched on. But so I was recently at an event called FutureCast, which I think is co-hosted by Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce. Cool. And one of the things that we talked about was our national economic trends, state, and then local. And locally, we're really missing that 25 to 45-year-old age demographic, which is, the very, very beginning of Gen Z and millennials. And one of the things that they talked about is millennials are way less likely to commute than prior generations, and Gen Z is even less likely. And so one of the issues that we have, even with the workforce, it all ties into affordable housing, because we have new generations that aren't as willing to travel to go to work, which means they're not living here either. And so we have pretty much an exacerbated issue where we have, the college age people, and then they all go off to big cities and come back when they're ready to retire. But we're missing a huge gap. And so one of the things that I'm trying to work on next year is working with the different businesses and business advocacy organizations to connect, college students at IU with different business opportunities in Bloomington and the greater Monroe County area. Part of that is just helping students recognize what's available to them. I think, I know what the industries are here, and so do a lot of other people, but that might not be the college students who generally don't really go west of college or College Ave. And so that's kind of a big project of mine, is just how can we connect young people with the opportunities to stay here, but still simultaneously we have to attack the housing affordability crisis, because we won't be able to get anyone to stay without it.
And we have a real opportunity in attracting those students to stay here, because a large portion of college students across the United States actually want to stay where they went to school. And so we have this captive audience. And if we can give them the means to stay here, the opportunity, I don't mean gift them a house. If we have the opportunity that they're looking for, both in job and housing, I think our population attraction is pretty much done for us. Very high quality of place, quality of life here. People want to stay, and others, like me, may be riding their bike through and decide to stay. Yay. Yes.
Yeah, I myself would really like to stay in Bloomington after I'm done with my graduate degree, but with the amount of jobs that are offered for my field versus the cost of living in Bloomington, it's very hard to justify that. So I really agree with your point, is that there needs to be more traction with jobs, but there also just needs to be a more affordable housing market, because in the long term, I wouldn't be able to sustain living here probably. though that depends. It's less so for me than the many others who have lower income who would have a lower income than me once I graduate. But and also I wanted to note that and yeah, job attraction, like you said, like providing jobs. My mom, for instance, when she lost her job at IU in the IT field, she of course tried to apply to some of the pharmaceutical companies that are here in Bloomington. But when they didn't take her application, then at that point she has not many other options. So she's looking elsewhere, and she's soon going to be moving away from here as well. So probably to Indy or some other things.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things I've been thinking about lately is how Bloomington is perceived in the rest of the state, and we'll be talking a lot more about who we are as Bloomingtonians and what does Bloomington mean for us in the coming year. But it was pointed out to me by a member of our state legislature who lives in Fishers that he can get to both the State House and the Indianapolis airport faster from Bloomington, Indiana, than he can from Fishers, Indiana. And that really pivots the kind of people that we may be able to host here as residents. When you have, spousal teams that, one works in Bloomington and the other in Indy, we are much more likely now to be host to those families than we perhaps were in the recent years. So I don't necessarily want to be a bedroom community of Indianapolis. I think people want to come to Bloomington because Bloomington is Bloomington, and we should really take pride in that and in the assets that we have. It's now a really realistic trip to the Indianapolis airport.
I have another question sent in. Someone took a survey on possible conversions of 3 downtown surface parking lots for housing in the last administration. Has that been pursued?
There was a survey done. Okay. I have not reviewed that survey, and I don't know if anybody in the administration has reviewed that survey. I assume it was more of an assessment than a survey? You don't know? Okay.
I do remember hearing some murmurings about that. I think it was one of the parking lots across the street from the library as one of them. But I also have not heard anything recently.
Parking's an issue that we're going to have serious discussions about as a community. The numbers I've heard are that at some point, 94% of our population here in Bloomington drives a car, or rides in a car that's not a Uber, so we need a place for them to park to continue to support downtown businesses, but we also have a very major convention center that we are proudly in the process of creating. And so if those cars are not parking downtown, we need an efficient way for them to get downtown that is comfortable and frequent enough that people will use that transportation system.
That's an interesting question there. And I've wondered about this for a while, but the 4th Street garage, do the parking fees pay for that? How does that work?
Well, the 4th Street garage was a major investment, so the parking fees won't pay for it for a long time. That was a bonded project, I believe. But parking fees are used for those kinds of things. There's also a parking fee fund that the council gets to approve or disapprove the ways that that the administration recommends using.
Okay. But how is the garage doing? I mean, is it
Frequently, especially recently, it has been quite full. And so, yes, people are utilizing those garages. 7th Street too, at the corner of 7th and Walnut, can get quite full. So it tends to ebb and flow a bit with what's happening in town, but they are being used.
Yeah, I will say in the times that I've been downtown recently and parked in a parking garage, I've had to drive up to like the 4th or 5th level. So from my like personal anecdote, I would also say that it's being used.
Trade still has some room in it, but that will not be true for long, I believe. Yes. What is everybody excited about? What do you want us to know about?
I don't know if you know that you mentioned Hopewell Park, the Hopewell Commons, and you said the phrase ping pong to describe sort of the difficulty in figuring out who's going to talk next. Did you know that there are 2 concrete ping pong tables that will be installed in that park as an amenity? I think they're already installed. And my thought is that it would be a perfect venue for people to go and settle their beefs if they have them. It's a bring your own paddle and ball situation. So people who had beefs could go there and settle them in the park playing ping pong instead of debating them in settings like this, for example. That would be way more fun. That's just an observation. I also have a question, an actual question that someone sent to me, and it's kind of down in the weeds, so brace yourself.
Okay.
Councilmember Dave Rollo recently mentioned at a BCOS meeting that he wants to see more enforcement of development landscaping requirements, which are handled by the Bloomington Environmental Commission. The enforcement of these requirements, which deal with native plantings and their maintenance, falls to the city senior environmental planner, a traditionally overworked position. Do the mayor and council member support finding the funding necessary to hire additional environmental planners to ensure that developers are abiding by their agreements and building in an environmentally friendly manner wherever possible? By extension, do they support the work of BCOS and the EC on these matters? That's the question.
Great. I'll say that in principle, I support enforcing the development ordinance, including the native planting ordinances, et cetera. And when I came into office, Deputy Mayor Knapp and I did listening sessions with every single department. We did every shift of fire and police. We were thorough. The universal feedback was that we need more staff. That came from every single department. And so when I get asked about a particular staff appointment, a new staff role, I always like to let the public know that there are many very worthy places that we need extra attention in the city. And I am trying in my role to balance accountability with our taxpayers, with the work that we have in front of us, and to do that in as equitable a manner as we possibly can, and also in a way that that really addresses the priorities that that I at least hear that we share as a community. And so, yes, and.
I'll second a lot of what was said. I think generally when you approach a new position, you know, you have to look at the city in a holistic view. And I guess my perspective is a little bit different because city council really just approves what you bring. And so it's really at a different stage by the time it gets to city council. But I definitely agree with Carrie's approach in terms of just like equitably looking at the whole city and figuring out if that is the best way to spend money, even if we can all agree that it's a good way. I will continue to support sustainability throughout the city in the ways that I can. And I appreciate the question.
I got a question by text, which is that given the recent opening of the Forge, which is the new building in the Trades District, can you give us a little bit of highlights on what's happening in the Trades District and what's going on over there? We're really excited about the Forge opening. That was a record pace for getting a building under roof of that magnitude and that quality. It is a Class A office building built at spec. Already, the leases are flying like hotcakes, which I frankly didn't expect. But those leases are coming in much more rapidly than I had anticipated. My great thanks to former Mayor John Fernandez, who is heading up that the Forge project in the Trades District, and is doing a great job attracting companies there. Next up, if you've been watching the Redevelopment Commission meetings, we will be selling the balance of the Trades District land over to the Trades District. So that will that has been owned by the city, and in order to really create truly shovel-ready projects, which these businesses and developers need, those will go into the hands of the Trades District. That land purchase is being funded by a really exciting grant from the Lilly Endowment called the community, it's called the CCC, and I always have problems when we have initials, remembering what the original words were. The College Community Collaborative, I think. The CCC grants were focused at university communities to get truly pivotal collaboration projects off the ground. And this one seeks to really build an active bridge between the university's research and the commercialization that they want to do, and incubating businesses there in Trades District. So very clear economic development focus and helping the university pivot what their research is really aimed at, and making it really feed industry here. And of course, the university has already really adapted many of their degree programs for what we're interested in hosting here in terms of business and what is appropriate in the region. So I'm really excited about what's happening in trades. There's already a lot more energy there than there was even on January 1st when I started my term in office, and that will continue. We of course had Paragraph open a new storefront, so to speak, in the Kiln building, and there's more to come there with the new Soma coffee shop and other exciting developments. So I'm excited for even more local, proximate coffee.
So City Council doesn't have a lot to do with the Forge, but I will say I'm really, really excited about the project, and I really hope that this area helps get students a little bit more off campus so they can see really all the different things that Bloomington has to offer, and it's not just they stay on campus for 4 years. So I'm really excited about it personally.
Other questions? We're coming to close to the end of our time together, and I'm happy to stay for a few minutes afterwards if people have other questions. Yes?
Yeah, you asked what we're really excited about. I would say the Hopewell district, but even more so like the things that are popping up around it, such as like the 2nd Street bike lane. I could see myself using that a lot because but yeah, I already have to go down a side street, one of the streets that's like north of the 2nd Street in order to try to cross from the B line to get to the multi-use path that's later down the road. So I really appreciate that. I also am really excited about the Green Line BRT as well. I think it would go past Hopewell as well along 2nd Street. It's a really exciting project for me because if I did end up living in Hopewell, it would be a great connection. And I think it'd be a huge step to have BRT in Bloomington, especially because Indianapolis is also attempting it with a city population that's much bigger, but if we can make it work in Bloomington, I think that'd be pretty exciting. I do think, and it goes along 3rd Street, and I do think that, that area isn't exactly like the worst place for like traffic and stuff when it comes to buses. Buses generally go down 3rd Street and Atwater and whatnot pretty efficiently, but I asked the question about 10th Street because I frequently ride that from the downtown to the IU campus. The 6 line specifically goes down 10th Street, and it is delayed often by like 15 minutes to 20 minutes or so, depending on the day. Sometimes it can be 10 minutes delayed, but regardless, it's delayed by a lot. And I just thought I don't know, so not so much a question, but more just like an argument for supporting bus lanes along the road, because I of course think that the planning department should do traffic studies and make sure that it wouldn't completely disrupt traffic. But on the one hand, just with the sheer number of bus lines, I counted them, and there's about 10 combined between Bloomington Transit and the campus buses that interact with that section of 10th Street, and it's really a choke point for most of those systems. So I think I would really appreciate if the city could do that, especially because there are a lot of students that rely on those buses, and especially the 6 line with all the people that take it, with how crowded it is all the time when I get on it. It's and how slow it is, it can be a bad experience. So
I've ridden that 6 line many times. So for those of you who don't know, BRT is Bloomington Rapid Transit. And so those are some more efficient bus routes. Dave, do you have another question? Oh, sorry. Is there one in the front? No.
I was just going to add another thing I'm excited about, tax increment financing. And the reason I'm excited about it is at the last redevelopment commission meeting, the guy from Reedy Financial, I think his name is Max or Matt Frisch, he handled the Go bonds for the administration of the city council recently. He gave the annual analysis of what it would be like if all the developments in the TIF district happened just sort of magically without sort of the investment and the incentives. How much of that money would actually go back to the taxing jurisdictions? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a hypothetical experiment to see, like, why do we do this? Because it does capture taxes that, in part, would go to other taxing jurisdictions. So how much is the in part? And the thing that, excited maybe is the wrong word. I was stunned by the analysis because the margin there is 95%. So in other words, based on his analysis, we get, just like $17 million in TIF revenue. If we said, all right, fine, let's not have a TIF district. Let's instead just let those taxes go where they would ordinarily go, to the taxing jurisdictions, that would be only $1 million. So the bargain we're making by having a TIF district is to say, instead of distributing $1 million to a bunch of different taxing jurisdictions, and they will do what they do with that, and they will do something constructive, I'm sure, because they're government, and government figures out good things to do. But the trade-off is $17 million for Bloomington's RDC. And I think I mean, it's different in Indiana than in other states. In other states, it's 1-to-1, where you're actually grabbing taxes from other jurisdictions. And I was excited enough about that I'm talking about it at this forum. So there you go.
The TIF districts do allow us to be strategic in redevelopment, and it is quite exciting. And every time I hear a Reedy presentation, I get excited about some new analysis that they have. So they're great at breaking things down so they're understandable. I also just want to say I'm excited about those ping pong tables, and I'm pretty sure Dave Askins just asked us to do maybe traveling office hours at the ping pong tables this summer. That's what I heard. Yes.
Make some decisions.
Could you explain and maybe clarify the difference between the $17 million of revenue that are made available and the $1 million that would otherwise go to the, I assume it would come from property taxes?
Yeah, this is property tax.
So how, could you explain why there's such a discrepancy? Because the TIF captures property tax revenue, so I'm just curious on that.
I can't eloquently do that, but I can direct you to the recording of the RDC meeting, or I can have Jessica provide that in a public format. Yeah.
Well, it boils down to the fact that for those tax jurisdictions, what they can collect is subject to the regular cap on the levy.
Yeah, okay.
But the taxes that the RDC captures are not.
Yeah, that wasn't clear, but I see.
So that's the room
Yeah.
in which.
So the property assessments have increased by ostensibly $17 million, but because of the levy, which would distribute that revenue, it's capped at a lower rate.
That's probably a fair way to say it, I think, but I'm not Max Frisch.
So does that
And the distributions stay there instead of being.
Well, but the TIF districts
Sliced.
are all over. So does that mean that if it were possible, why don't we just create one large TIF district?
Well, we do have a consolidated TIF, but because there are public goods that perhaps would get underfunded if we only did TIF. That's my very basic answer for that. All right, we are going to wrap up. Sydney, do you want to highlight anything else that we haven't had an opportunity to address? No? Okay. I do have traveling office hours next week, and I have no idea if there are still available slots. But I'm excited about a lot, but I really had the opportunity to do the lighting on the square on Friday night, and I looked out over the sea of faces that make up our Bloomington community and was just really proud that we are a community that will never agree on everything, but we do together welcome people to belong. And we find ways to build community even in these small events like a square lighting. And I hope that this holiday season we can all have the spirit of finding ways for preparing for our new year and together finding ways to make Bloomington a really welcoming place for the people who already live here and those who may be looking for a home here. So thank you for coming and spending an hour of your time with us tonight, and appreciate all of your excitement and your questions.
And you're sharing, so thank you.